Hey, everybody. Welcome to Unfinished People. I'm thrilled today to be with my really good friend, Mike Edwards. He and his friend, Katie Dudgeon, is that how she say your name?
Yes.
Yeah. They've started a nonprofit in San Francisco called Proxima, and just with a real heart to help churches, people connect with people that need to experience the love of God and know how to live that out and do it in a way that's authentic and true to Jesus. And I'll say this, like, you've done this for me for so many years. Like, I've experienced this. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today is because the idea for this with my friend Brandon is we feel really unpolished and unfinished, not only as pastors, but just as people. Like, we just feel like, goodness, there's so many rough edges. And so you're somebody who's always been, had an impact on me. And like, God's used you to just, very gently always, but like this kind of like just pushing a little bit. And so I'm just pumped you're here, man. So thank you for coming.
Well, thank you, Chad. This is one of those relationships that you're glad you have. You don't see each other all the time, but you see each other enough to where you actually, the fact that God is changing us really makes sense. It's like, oh, well, you're not the same. I'm not the same. And our stories go back long enough to where you can say, man, this is a journey.
Yes.
Loving Jesus is a real journey.
It is.
It's great.
It is. Lots of ups and downs. But I think you've, one of the things I'll say is you've really been, like we were just talking at the beginning, like at the last time I saw you was probably 2018 before COVID. And even then I remember like we were at dinner. And so, and it's you and David and me and Sammy, and, you were talking about some things and I was doing my normal thing I've always learned in Christianity, and just, I was taking every single bait, even though you weren't baiting. I was just doing what I'd always.
More than you think.
Yeah.
More than you think.
Yes. So you're strategic. You always been strategic, but I was living in the shallows. I'll just say that. And I feel like that's a thing that I've struggled with. And I think the church struggles with, like, we don't know. It's almost like, well, here's the gospel. Here it is. So yes or no. And then we're like, okay, well, we're just going to go back into our church. And if you want to come, you know the truth now. And I've not experienced that with you. Like, you've always, even when you hired me years ago as a youth pastor, I feel like you wanted to, not only like you were most comfortable, but that you also felt like I have to live at the edge in between where the church and those who know the Lord and those who haven't experienced it and maybe even have been hurt. There's like this in-between space, and I kind of just saw you very comfortable to straddle that space.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Would you say?
Yeah, it's really good, Chuck, because you and I met in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is like the bastion of conservatism and the Bible Belt and the whole bit of that. And one of the things that I get asked all the time, and I don't know if you do too, but everybody they expect, because I live in San Francisco, so you're going to come back here, right, when you get done with all this. And I said, that's a real interesting question. And I know why you're doing it. I've got kids here, so that I've got kids in Knoxville, so that makes some sense. But that's not what they're doing. What they're doing is that surely you don't want to live out there. And I always get puzzled. I say, I know what your logic makes sense, but you're making a decision based on the Christians you want to live around.
Yes.
And I'm going to make a decision based on the non-Christians I want to live around, because that's still, no matter what I'm doing, that's still part of the calling that we have, is to reflect the light of Christ into dark places, any place we are. And so when you think of it in the sense of that, then, San Francisco's it's my dream. It's actually, you're going to hear it. So as we talk about it, it's a culmination of a life story. So yeah, I could tell you this just so everybody will know, because San Francisco's got a lot of good rep and bad rep. But I grew up here. This is going to date us a little bit, date me a little bit. So I grew up here in the 60s and the 70s at a very, all the time in the 60s and 70s in San Francisco. But my first encounter with this city was I was 5 years old, and we came across the bridge. And if you ever come across the bridge into the city, you see this beautiful skyline set against mountains in the background and bay all around. It's like the most incredible view you could have. I had that at 5. This was a magical place. This was just a beautiful, magical place. That childhood love, it's there. So people like, doesn't this bother you, and the ugliness of this? And I was like, no, this is
You're like,
best
no,
city in the world. Are you getting? No. I fell in love with this when I was a kid. That's never gonna. So again, it's the humor of God to be able to do that. Now when I came back, I was in my 60s, probably early 60s, is when I finally got to move to the city I've loved my whole life.
Yeah.
That's God's plan.
I love it. So one of the things that I think about is, like you're kind of bringing back those living in the shallows. Sometimes the sources you have for like what you're hearing about, like, let's say another place like a big city, and you like, especially if you're only to use what's his name's recent book, John Eldredge, Experiencing Jesus. He says we're disciples of the internet. We're being discipled by the internet, and so people hear, especially ironically around election seasons, that city's so bad or that city's so bad, and they're always like the big ones. And usually it's like some hyperbolic kind of story they found in the news of something that happened. And I remember this happening to me. Because you hear it, it's like New York. You don't want to go to New York, like that. You hear all the stuff that's happening there. And I remember I went up there for a writing conference, and it was so wonderful. And I think a lot of it was just being in the subway, being on the streets, and being around people that I knew like were hurting and struggling. And I felt God's heart for them. And it was just almost like, this is the opposite of the narrative that we're hearing, a little bit of a fear narrative.
Yeah.
Why do you think that the fear stuff kind of is just so dug in?
Yeah, there's a deep reason underneath it that I want to talk about with you in a minute. But the thing you were just saying brings to mind one of my best friend here is an unhoused person, and you met him, and
yeah.
If anybody comes to visit me, usually he's one of the ones that I want you to meet because he's a good friend and he's not the stereotypical, very intelligent, very, it's just not what you think.
Yeah.
And obviously there's drug culture here, and there's a lot of addiction. So there are parts of the city that are just really, really bad. And my friend is not in that category. But one of the things that I realized is when I leave San Francisco, like if we were sitting together, one of the things we easily do is we will talk about the homeless people or the liberals or the gays, or we'll do it as third person. And I caught it when I was out of the city one time, and I came back and I said, I can't do this, Lord. We live in a personal world. Our gospel is very personal. Our relationship with Jesus is very personal. When you make it third person, it's about them. You get a whole lot of excuse to not be personal, and they have a problem and they're this. Now, if I change it to Bob and Frank and Pete, these are people I know. So you're talking about the liberals, but I know them. They're my neighbors. And if I personalize it, then everything changes. And I think that's part of the big thing that we've got to face is that we have opinions about everything in the U.S. That's our right to have opinions about it, and we'll talk freely about it. But if you want to talk about LGBTQ issues, I'm not going to tell you my opinion unless there's somebody sitting there that's affected by this, because it's going to change our conversation.
Right.
And that's just, but why, Mike? Because God's personal to us. We're representing somebody that knows every bit and fiber of us. That's how we need to act with one another. So that's a big underlying thing. This gets to the root of what you were saying.
I love that. I think that the image bearer piece of every single human being on the planet has definitely been a growth edge. But there's that place of like people wanting to just almost like, let's circle the wagons. Like if I describe you as somebody on the like bleeding edge for me, my experience in the church has been, it's not even that we're near the edge. We're like way, way back. And then let's toss some things out there, and because it's safer it's a false safety, a false security. But yeah, it feels like we are betraying the whole purpose of the gospel, which is to see people. I think about the Matthew party that we always talk about in the Bible, where I just think about like, you don't see him sitting around that table going, all right, I'm going to just say something to every single person here because I know you and I know what things you need to change. He didn't do that. He just sat with them. He ate with them. He loved them where they were. It wasn't like, let me correct you before, that's an intro. I love that part about you, man. It's very challenging.
Chad, even more to the point, the adulteress, when they were gathered around the stoner, right? That's even more powerful, because he ends the story, who has a right to do this? He's the only one in the circle that had the right to do that. And yet he forgave her and walked away from it. That's really what Jesus, it's not correcting the behavior. It's I tell people all the time, we want to enter into these places with precepts, right? Or whether it's whatever it is, if it's a religious disagreement, if it's even a disagreement between us as brothers and sisters, we want to correct it. And I keep saying, what God is big enough to do that. God could do that part. He's done it in my life, my whole life. If I believe something wrong, he does it in your life. You're going to nag with it. He's going to fix that. The one thing he can't do, he can't represent love to you. He can't in flesh and blood. He did it once, but from that point on, it's us. So if you've got an opportunity to have a conversation with someone, realize the only thing that God can't do is love that person the way that you're sitting there across the table from is loving them. So if you want to default to that. Don't default to opinions or arguments, or even if you don't even agree with one another, that's
love
not
that.
what we're asked to do.
Goodness, what a great framework to think about, because it is. He has literally handed off the touching and talking to and seeing and receiving and putting our arms around to people to represent him, and we do a crappy job sometimes.
Well, again, Jesus said this at the upper room discord. He's leaving and he's telling them, he's telling them, a new commandment I give you. Why is it new? You could tell us to love one another. That's not new. Well, it's new because nobody had ever seen God love before. And now they actually saw God love in human form. And then he makes this profound statement that if you love one another, meaning you and me, love one another, then they'll know you follow me. The world will know you follow me. That's the only strategy. That's it. There's no missional strategy apart from that.
Yeah.
It's that's the glue that holds it all together. And, somehow we haven't lost it. The world's just diluted what we think love is.
Yeah.
And
do you know how, a question on that, like, so the Lord moves in us and changes us over, like we sense this work of the Spirit in our life as he helps us like go deeper. Like we move from this precepts, I got to just give you all the information. And then I realize, wait a minute, this is about formation ultimately, and how's somebody going to be formed, not just by slapping them upside the head with a bumper sticker. But would you say, like, when we met, I'm going to guess, I'm going to say that it was starting to happen, but it seemed like the Lord, there was a lot of crazy stuff going on in our church too. But would you say that God was already just stirring this part of you that was like, something's got to give here. Something's got to change. Because I want you to talk about that and how that ultimately moved you to a place of saying, I've got to go be like a little mermaid there. I want to be where the people are. I'm going to go to Berlin.
Yeah.
But like, would you say that was happening?
I think so. I mean, again, this is I wouldn't say I believe that happens.
Yeah.
This is the weirdest of what we'll do with this is we'll say that God is the Jesus that we told in Hebrews. Jesus is the author and perfecter of our faith. Right. So he's it. And we'll quote that to one another when we're in difficult times, as if it starts when we're Christians. And it doesn't start, or if he's the author of it, it starts way before that. Right. And so everybody you meet, you can make the assumption that Jesus is the author of their faith. He's the one that's doing this. How much of that you realize when I was 30? Not at all. So my era of time was I was a successful project engineer, and we're right in the middle of the church growth period. People were hiring project engineers because the church was projects and programs and all that kind of stuff. And it came in, and that was how you and I met. And that was I was leading with that skill, not gifting, skill. I was leading with that, and it was working because that's what the church needed at the time. And, it was a very, very successful story. I can look back at those days though, Chad, and I can't differentiate my skill from my gifts in those days because it's a different thing. It's not aptitude. The world hires you for your aptitude. God uses you because he's gifted you. And there's a very much a different in that. So I could go back and do the same thing. I've got the aptitude to do it. That's not my calling. Good grief. So
talk about your calling, your gifts. Like, how did you start?
My whole life, I know from the moment I was born, this idea about it's not just making disciples; it's making disciples with people that are distant from Christ. And I'm not a teacher in the sense that I could teach, but if you meet a teacher, one of the things that they really want to do is, well, give me an audience to be able to talk to. And people ask, well, what's that for you? I said, well, just give me 3 questions. What do you mean just 3? Just give me 3. Let me ask 3 questions. And they're like, what are you talking about? And for whatever reason, my gifting, my calling, all that relates to being, I can get really personal with people really quick because my gifting's discernment. And if my friends that know me well enough, whenever I ask a question, that's not really what you're asking, Mike. You're setting me up for this other thing that you're doing. And it's like, I know, but if I could set the table, I can get into your heart a lot faster. So because of that overlaid into the non-Christian world. And I didn't know how to do that, Chad. Honestly, I was taught to evangelism the way everybody else was taught to do evangelism in the 80s. We exchanged precepts, we had arguments. God has a wonderful plan for your life. We're impressing in the head and all that stuff. And I really thought that was what it was. And even in our days in Tennessee, I thought that's what it was. Then I went overseas. I went from the Bible Belt that in 2020. I went out in 2003, but in 2000, the place I moved to was the most godless place on the planet. The saying was they had forgotten that they'd forgotten God. And when you sit across the table, I thought it was going to be empty, but when you sit across the table and you try to explain your faith to someone that doesn't even believe that there's anything other than what you see, it's hard. It's terrible. And so you're like, and I generally would tell all the staff, we had a large team there, and anybody that came in, I'd say, especially a lot of young people, I'd say, somewhere in the first year, you're going to doubt whether God exists. Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So just wait. The only thing I ask is when it happens, you talk to somebody. Don't hold this inside yourself. And what's happening is all of a sudden you're unraveling the fact that these people don't believe the way that I do. And unless I push up against that, I don't have the conviction of it. I'm just going through the process of it. So those years for me and my family, they set up coming to San Francisco. They set up being understanding culture, context. So let me move you this direction. This is kind of my latest, and you're gonna everything in me. I told Chad I don't want any prep in this because I want to be able to be present with what God's teaching me. And this is recent within the last couple of months. And it really made sense once God started to explain. And this is why I did all this stuff to you over your lifetime. Part of when I come back to the U.S., one of the things that was happening in San Francisco, I kept saying, God is too small. Everybody I met, even the best of the best of the best, I would walk out of these meetings and say, somehow God is too small. I don't understand what that is. And this is like 5 years ago. And I've wrestled with that since that point in time. And what I realized that now in the last, since we started Proxima, I've probably had maybe, 70 conversations with people that I moved from leadership development into just people in the church because we're trying to activate the church, not just the leaders, to really engage proclaiming the gospel. And as I talk to them, something happens that I look at and I realize this is exactly what I was dealing with when I was overseas. Because when I was overseas, what would happen is if you were an American group coming over, or you were a missionary coming over, what you were facing was not what you knew. You were facing the culture that you were in. So for instance, I was notorious for taking a group of people up to the top of the Berlin Cathedral, this beautiful, ornate, beautiful cathedral. And we'd sit up there. I'd let them observe, make observations on what you see. And they'd talk about, the majesty. We're Americans, so we don't see big cathedrals. So it's the majesty and the stained glass and all the icons and all. It's just this incredibly reverent place. And then I'll stop them and say, okay, now, while you were describing that, I want to tell you something that my German friends would have saw that you didn't even see. They're like, what do you mean? I said, 3 guys with baseball caps, cutoff shirts, and tennis shoes walk right through the middle of that really reverent place as if they were strolling through the museum. You knew it was reverent, but you didn't connect the action with it. And then everybody's like, we didn't even see that. Now, that's not a right or wrong deal. It's just the fact my German friends would have seen that. That's their culture. They would have, this is not just some museum. This is actually has history, and that's their culture. And so when I came back in San Francisco, I kept thinking, there's something, the problem we're having is we have a culture of evangelicalism that is shaped more of who we are than even the theology of it. Right. And what it does, the culture thing, the cultural right or wrong, it allows us enough room to segment what we believe enough to do that. So what's a good instance of this? I was talking with a person. I mean, I get asked questions all the time. You're going to teach me how to do evangelism. And it's like, well, what is it that you want me to teach you? What do you want me to teach you? And I'm like, well, I want to be able to talk to my non-Christian friends. And so my first question usually is, so is your behavior different around non-Christians and Christians? You're asking me to teach you something that don't you do the same thing around them that you do at home or in the church? And you get this deer in the headlight looks. It's like, well, no, because I'm supposed to do something to them. There's something to do. I'm like, okay, so that's not a right or wrong. That's a cultural thing because we're told that we have a certain role with non-Christians. I think even asking the question, Chad, I put off these days, but when we ask one another, are they saved? Are they not saved? That's a cultural thing of evangelicalism. We had to create that metrics because we were evangelicals. That was our proclamation. The Bible doesn't give us it doesn't give us clarity on whether people are saved or not. It's not the first question Jesus is asking, all those things. But when we do that, when we go into evangelism with that mindset, It's us versus them. It's I've gotten something and you've gotten something. San Francisco is not a place to do that. I mean, it's a place you could do that, but you won't have any effect, because what happens here is this is different than Europe. It's not post-Christian Europe. America's going to have some incredibly different problems than Europe had related to post-Christian. Here, there's a spirituality. If I ask my colleagues, pastors, is San Francisco a spiritual place? No, it's not. It's very secular. And I'll stop and say, okay, what you just did is you answered the question based on whether they agree with us. If you answer it that way, no, it's not. But guess what? This is the most spiritual place I've ever lived. It's just not our spirituality.
Yeah.
And people are, well, okay, what's significant about that? I said, please don't take away spirituality. I just lived 18 years as a missionary in a place that there was no spirituality. That's death. Here, applaud. They're seeking. They're trying to figure something out. But our culture, again, tells us, well, what they're doing is wrong. We're right. They're wrong.
Yeah. Do you think
I don't want to do that. You're a teacher, so you're
no,
one of the
good.
reasons that they think there's a right and wrong. because
you're just setting off good little fires in my head, and they're good ones. They're good ones because they're prompting questions. Because so metrics, you were talking about metrics back in and it's just such a weird thing to apply to this whole thing, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so it is. I'm not even going to say like, what do you measure instead? It's such a weird, that's how we feel like we're doing successful things. Well, we had this many come to this, and this person did this.
We had to do that.
Yeah, and maybe we are ripping some stuff out of Acts there and trying to do some application that's just wrong. Well, 3,000 were added to their number. That's probably what we did. We just read the scripture there. Well, that's what we obviously need to do. So when people are looking at, okay, did I represent Jesus authentically in both worlds? What kind of things are you asking? What's faithfulness to you? What is the representing the kingdom?
When you talk about metrics, that it could be an easy conclusion that, oh, Mike's just one of those people that just don't think, But I'm one of the most strategic planning people on the planet. I was a process engineer by training, and I understand the reason that we do all that. But one of the things you've got to differentiate is when we do metrics, we're measuring an organizational effectiveness. We're not measuring a personal effectiveness. We're measuring the organization's effectiveness. So the question you just asked me a personal question. You didn't ask me an organizational question. And I'm going to tell you, the metrics personally are not the organizational metrics. You're measuring how effective are we as a group. Okay. The question you just asked me related to metrics was an individual question. It wasn't an organizational question. I'm not going to put a metrics on an individual question because that's not the way humans operate. So if we do, what we've done is we've made whatever we do into a process or project or stuff. So the simplicity of your question, I'm going to tell you, there's only one thing Jesus told us to do. It's love one another. I mean, we sum up the whole law by love the Lord your God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself. So your measurement is simple. When you lay your head down on your pillow at night, ask the Lord, did I love people well today? People are like, oh, Mike, that's so fuzzy. I'm telling you, it's not going to be fuzzy,
right?
Because you're actually asking him, how well did I do in the area that you really want me to do? And if you start refining that over time, what you'll realize is that your inclination, your desire, your heart, your new creation is to love. God it's not an attribute of God. It's who he is. It's who we are. And if you start looking for it, what happens is it's like a volume control on a big soundboard. You start turning it up, turning it up, turning it up. There's all these other inputs that you have to navigate. But look at that one. That's that's the metrics, if you can call it a metric.
Well, the funny thing about me is I hate metrics. Like I push back on them so much. And it was one of the hardest things stepping into a senior pastor role was that's what they want to know. Like, what are your big picture goals? How are you going to know you reach those things? And I remember some of the stuff that was written down for me, like, we'll have this percentage amount of people in these kind of groups. And I was like, I can't guarantee that. No, but we can create a culture. So here's a question that I'm thinking about. You just bring it up. So I was brought up as well, very heavy into here are the precepts. Here are the things that comprise the gospel. Here's the things we say. And all the while cutting off the fuller impact of the gospel. There was this kind of very structured, here are the things you do, here's the stuff. And I just listened recently to Tim Keller's son, Michael. I think he's a pastor in New York, and he was talking to Rebecca McLaughlin, she's a Brit, Confronting Christianity. And I was like, this is something I haven't thought about. And this is what you're reminding me of, is he said, the old way, which my dad was there, was, hey, let's talk about the existence of God. Let's talk about the authority of the scriptures. Let's talk about this, your need. And he said, and people still want to teach that, and it's fine. He goes, but here's the problem. Nobody's asking those questions. He said, they're not asking that question anymore. And so you're all prepared to just shred somebody in a debate and nobody's there. But what they're asking? Is Christianity good? What do you think about that? I can just say that.
Well, a couple things, Chad. I mean, one, we made the gospel about salvation, which is the proclamation of the gospel isn't just about the plan of salvation. And so what we did is we put it into a space that it didn't ever exist, in order to be able to figure out whether we were actually saving people or not. That was part of, and that was okay. And this is a cultural thing. If you go back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, all that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you try to apply it today, I'll tell teachers this all the time. I said, the reality is you're doing church the way we did in 1980. And you think it's okay. Here's your problem. 1980, we didn't have the internet. You had to go to church to learn about things. You had to read a book to learn about things. You had to listen to something to learn about things. Today, that's not the state. Your influence from the pulpit today is probably, I don't know, tenfold less than what it would have been in the 80s, because people can put you against any other precept that's out there. So if you're teaching precepts, what you're doing is you're dropping pebbles in the ocean, because there's so much other information out there. So right now, because of the U.S., the way that we are, the teachers are sitting at the top of all the organizational leaderships, the top of all the metrics, to be a teacher, an organizational leader, all that sits there. And that's okay. I'm telling you, what's going to happen, though, is what people want is they want people to help them sort through all the information. They don't want more information. They've got so much information at their fingertips. They can't figure out what's right, what's wrong, what's cultural, what's not cultural. You evangelicals believe this, and I'll hear what they say, and I'm like, I don't believe that. I'll give you even one that's even harder, Chad. This will even learn. Just with a friend yesterday, we were talking about other religions. And he was telling me the story of a close friend of his that was Hindu. And he was asking him the question about, well, why do you believe what you believe? Why is it this there? And the guy went through all these things. He said, well, this, and it was all related to the way we treat humans. And my friend stopped and looked at him and said, I'm a Christian. And the reason I'm a Christian is for all those reasons you just said. And that space is, I'll tell people all the time, we're monotheistic for a reason. We believe that there is only one God and he's supreme over everything. Anybody else that has any spirituality, any form of any other spirituality, they're trying to get to Yahweh. They're trying to get to our God. We just don't tell them that. What we do is we say, no, you're wrong and we're right.
Yeah.
And so the reality is that, in a lot of ways, they've got rightness in what they do. Now that sounds, if I take me back to 1980, that sounds bad. You just affirm that Buddhism is okay. I said, no, that spirituality is the part that you want. So you don't want to take away their spirituality, because what you have in its place is a book written by men.
Yeah.
That's it. That's your apology. Yeah. I got a book. My book's better than you're worshiping the sun or whatever it is you're doing.
Right.
And so it's not the right argument. The right argument is all roads lead to one place. Paul did this on Mars Hill. What you're seeking for is this. I'm not going to convince you in one conversation. Good grief, it'd take me a whole lifetime to believe this.
Yeah.
But I want to have a dialogue. What do you believe? I mean, what is it? What happens to your life when things get bad and you believe in Buddhism? And what you're going to find is that there's not a lot of depth. Most people don't believe with the depth of what you believe your faith is based on. That's the new apologetic.
Yeah. I love it. I think that I was just you talking about this. It's just the word. It is. It's like Jesus said it to the Pharisees. You search the scriptures.
Yeah.
And they mean nothing to you because you don't know that they're trying to lead you to me. I was thinking to 2 Corinthians 3. To this day, when Moses is read, when the scriptures are read, there's a veil over their eyes, but anybody can find this place where the veil is removed. That's the part I want to ask you about, is because it has to be this work of the Spirit, and he has somehow chosen our frailty and our brokenness and our kind of awkwardness in trying to meet people to be the vehicle that he uses, and that his Spirit, it's like he's not just zapping people from heaven. But how are you seeing it? Tell me just some things where you're seeing the Lord start to bring just an awareness of his love or an awareness of just the reality of Jesus.
Yeah, I think in this context, what we're trying to do is we're trying to reframe the gospel from being a "I'm right, you're wrong" mentality,
Mm-hmm.
which is what most San Francisco view. Yeah, I won't use the word evangelical. I won't even use evangelism because it's got such a culturally loaded thing in the city. The precepts that we talk about, you can talk about. I can talk if I want to talk. Ask someone if they're a Christian, I'm going to get some resistance. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
with someone for 10 minutes in a conversation and I ask the question, "Are you a spiritual person?" They lean forward. "Oh yeah, yeah." Let me tell you. Okay, if now I can shut off the conversation by saying, "Well, what you believe is wrong. Let me tell you what's right."
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that, right? So that's not the way humans learn. So what we're learning is I mean, it's simple, but it's difficult. You just have to listen. You have to listen, and they're going to say something wrong. They're not going to give you a real specific instance. Was with a girl who was talking about her family. She's one of those and someone from an Asian heritage whose family is Buddhist, and she's Christian, the only Christian. And so she talks about all this tension that they have whenever they're together, and because she wants to tell them about her faith, she wants to do all this stuff. And she said, "It's just there, Mike. How do I share the gospel with them?" And I stopped, and this is my question. This is the kind of stuff we're doing. I said, "Have you ever stopped to listen to what they believe? Have you ever asked them what they believe?" And right away, I mean, without even thinking, no, but they're wrong. Okay, so what you just
Yeah.
did, now we can talk
Yeah.
about love because you took it away from a precept. This is your family you're talking about, and you don't want to listen to them. You want them to listen to you, but you don't want to listen to them. But let's talk about, again, Paul's got a lot to say about this related to love. And so the essence is you're trying to defend something that God doesn't need you to defend. And this is where the saying I gave you earlier is that the only thing God can't do is show them love. And so what you need to do is listen to them. But they're wrong. I know you think they're wrong. But I want to tell you something, Jay. You're a teacher, so I'm going to tell you this because I'm not a teacher. I don't sit in front of everybody. I don't have any accountability related to this. But here's the reality. We're trying to represent the creator of every living thing on our planet. From
Mm-hmm.
the depth of the ocean to the height of the stars. That's it. The fact that we won't get asked a question about God and we try to figure out an answer to it is really puzzles me. We should be saying, I mean, here's your apologetic, everybody. These words, you know everything you need to know to be able to defend God. I do not know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We should be saying we don't know far more than we're saying we know, because what happens is if we define God by what we know, it's what I told you. I felt God being really small because somewhere in our mind, we've got to the space of thinking that, well, if it's true only if I can explain it. So why does God allow all these horrific things to happen? Well,
Right.
let me try to explain it to you. It's like, stop. Just say,
Yeah,
I don't
we have to
know.
stop doing that. Yes, it is the best answer.
Yeah.
It's like there's a mystery
It's just,
here.
I don't know. And because the reality is nobody wants to worship a God that's crafted in our image. We need reverence and awe and wonder in order
Mm-hmm.
for us to be able to actually help people that really want to find their spirituality in the gospel.
So give me like a week in your life and how you are you and Katie and others as you're teaching others. Like, how do you, and I don't want to cut you off. If you want to say something there, do that as well. But I want to know like kind of what I got to experience when I was there years ago. Like, what do you do? How do you do this then? How does the Lord lead you?
Yeah, a couple things are really important about that is, and I'll give you an easy illustration that's something I know my whole life, right? I memorized a verse when I was 18 that let your light shine before men in such a way they see your good works. And I'm thinking, okay, so this is it, right? I just need to let my light shine, go out and do all that and do all stuff. And it was really just a few weeks ago that God kind of gently in a quiet time said, Mike, finish the verse. What do you mean? Let your light shine before men in such a way that they see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Right. And I'm like, wait a minute, that means something completely different. That means that it's not me, it's you. That means I have to actually represent you. I have to do something that they think that you would do. I have to act in a way that they not offended by you, but they actually want to glorify you. They want to say, man, your God's better than my God. That totally changes everything the way you live your life. So what I'm always looking for, the easiest thing about evangelism, and Chad, you know me, okay? So I am not an evangelist. My whole story is it wasn't until I moved to San Francisco that I even figured out any of this stuff, even as a missionary. It's like, because I believe that you just sit down and you go through the plan of salvation, and nobody wants to hear that when in Europe. It's
or
like,
they know it already.
They
They're
know
like,
it.
oh,
They
thanks a
know it.
lot.
Yeah. It's, well, what it feels like is 'twas the night before Christmas and all through the house. It just feels like a fairy tale. And so they know that part of it. So, but the reality when I came here, it's like, wait a minute, this is really different, because now there's this weirdness. People are actually making the decision. They made the decision two generations ago about this. In America, now we're making the decision. Are we going to be this? Are we going to be that? Is spirituality going to be this way? Is it going to be that way? And it's the most opportune time, but we've just blown it because we haven't listened enough to be able to do it. So back to your typical day. The simplest thing for everybody to start to think, I can do this. Here's my challenge. The way Jesus intended us to express the gospel. If you ask me a question, how often do you share the gospel? One, I know you're asking me the plan of salvation question, so I'm going to defer that and say, no, the true essence of what the good news is, the answer is everybody, every day, with everybody I meet. Look at me like, you must be an evangelist. No, what you've done is, what we need to do is we need to set the story to our starting points different. My starting point with someone is not to sit down and with these precepts. My starting point is to recognize the image of God in them. So your easiest thing, if you're afraid to death of evangelism like I was, start here. As you're walking around, look for where you see the image of God in somebody. Look for something like a mom bending down in a supermarket to wipe the nose of a child. Look for a security guard in a mall who looks like he's bored to death, but he's there. Walk up to the security guard and say, thank you for doing what you do. I feel safer because you're here. Okay, stop. What you just saw was the glory. You saw God's purpose for that. God's purpose for justice. God's purpose for, and this is why he's there, is because we believe in justice, because Jesus walked the earth. And so what happens in them, or the mom bending over to her child and just stop and say, man, it's so cool that you do that. It just shows me love in a whole different manner, because it's mom loving her child. What happens in her is she connects with this God. She connects with the precepts that we're trying to explain. And it feels much bigger to them than it does to our words. Guarantee they go home at night, talk about, you wouldn't believe what happened to me. Stranger came up to me and told me that they just were impressed that I was loving my child. Why is that so powerful? Because that's what God is. That's the glory of God. Now, people will say, my teacher friends will say, well, Mike, that's not evangelism. And I'll say, okay, so you can keep it in that category. I'm going to put it in the category of living my life to glorify the Lord. The least I did is I glorified God. That's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
But that's the starting point. The starting point is to reset. I'm looking for an opportunity to share the gospel. I hear that all the time. No, you're not. You're looking for an opportunity to see God working in somebody else's life. So, and that becomes a significant part of it. Now, what happens with this, Chad, I'll tell everybody that what happens with this is that you have to be in tune with the Spirit of God to be able to do anything related to this, because what you're looking for. I mean, if you'll start doing it, it's actually fun to assume God is doing something in somebody's life and look and just ask the question over and over, Holy Spirit, what are you doing in this person's life? What are you doing? It's so intriguing. I mean, it's all over the place. God becomes really big. It's like, man, I wouldn't even think that what you're wrestling with is possible. And so you learn and you grow from it. But the reality of all that is that our message is a spiritual message. Okay. Our message is, the problem is that we think that we can do something to get somebody saved. Now, you're trying to deliver a message that unmerited grace. You don't have to do anything to be saved, but I have to do something to get you saved. Now, guess what? Right. From that point on, you've warped the message already.
Yeah.
They'll take them the rest of their lives to figure out, was it really unmerited? And so generally people are, but Mike, come on, there's precepts, there's things we know. You can't just enter into this just willy-nilly. So I'm not. So your fun question, Chad. I'm going to give you an assignment. When you get to heaven, I want you to go to the thief on the cross and ask him what he did.
Right.
What did he understand to be saved?
Yeah.
He's going to get, I got no idea. He just told me I was going to be the
shortest one. He's got to be the shortest moment of discipleship. And like, it was just so quick. It was so quick.
Yeah.
It was
such a beautiful picture, because it was like, this is what the whole thing's about. He's dying and he's getting ready to do what the whole thing's about.
Yeah.
I was just going to say,
what I love about him too is that I think in one of the gospel accounts, he was also hurling insults at a certain point.
Yeah.
And then it's all there. Like and Jesus could have written both of them off, but he knew what was happening. He was
Well, this is
working.
the story. I know, Ted. This is the story of God. This is God. Genesis 1 says, "I want to bless humanity," and then Genesis 1 through 12 is some of the most horrid acts of humanity possible. And then it doesn't offend God because He knows that's who we are.
Chose you for the foundation of the world.
Here's the thing you've got to get in your head, because this is going to be the subculture of evangelicalism. Okay, and this is what you got to watch for. And I'm risk being offensive to somebody. I don't mean to be that at all. But you've got to risk that God gets 100% of the glory. Everything we do is about Him. Everything we do, my salvation is not about me being saved. My salvation is about God's glory. He's doing what He's doing in order to show creation who He is. We don't have anything. We don't get to take credit for anything. And so at this point, what will happen? Your teacher, so I know I've had these conversations. They'll say, "But Mike, it's both." And I'll stop and say, "Oh, how much of God's glory do you think you want to get? How much of that's He going to give you? 50%, 60%, 99%? How much of it are you going to get?" "Well, I'm not going to get any of it." "Okay." And then the response will be, but Mike, it's 100% both." And I'll stop and say, "Is it? He's going to give you 100% of the credit that He gets?" No, you don't do anything. And so what's underneath this whole thing is us making the story about us. And we do it in such subtle ways. If anybody ever does it's both and, stop, because that's what's happening. Well, it's both planning and it's doing it. It's both praying and it's doing work. And stop and say, "Is it really?" Because your part is zero.
Right.
And if you believe in anything other than that, you're not representing the gospel the way that we're taught it to be. But Mike, what are you saying? You're just going to walk around as a blob? No, I'm going to walk around looking for the work of God in everybody, because I believe everybody I meet, Jesus is doing something to perfect their faith. And it's fun. I hated this before. When I was in Berlin, Chad, I hated this. Here, it's like, "Oh man, God, what are you going to do today?" I'm going to meet somebody that's like, "What are they?"
Yeah.
Anyway.
Is when you guys, because I'd love for you to just talk a little more about the bigger picture of Proxima, you and Katie, and kind of how you help people like me and churches start, because I'll just kind of what I'm going to preface this with another article I read critiquing this coming alongside way. It was kind of, they were critiquing Keller, who's always presented this real gentle, I mean, he's definitely more apologetics kind of, but he was always like, "Hey, come alongside people in a gentle way." And there's like these kind of heavy hitters writing this critique against that, saying, "Nope, that time's over. We got to be aggressive. No more." Like, I'm just like, what in the world? I know it's not that. And I know you don't think it's that. But so how people, though, I don't know if they want that. They're afraid. That's definitely what I hear. A lot of stuff, like just recent events, things they watch. And so then everybody wants to wrap it up in this thing. And so then lost in the mix is the ability to love our neighbors and to love and pray for our enemies, or people we would think are enemies. That it's just what I feel. I feel like such a challenge on trying to encourage people to not be afraid and to lean in. And so how do you guys do that? Tell me about Proxima, a bigger picture, and granular as you want.
Yeah, it's really hard. I want to coach you on what you just asked more than anything. Here's the reality: is question people ask are generally not the questions they're asking, right? There's something underneath it. And the thing I'd encourage everybody to do is sit back and realize that you're asking me a question about God. You're not asking me a question about, that your whole idea about security, your whole idea about that tells me something about what they think about God. Right? It tells me that God's not big enough, tells me that I can't trust Him enough for my faith. It just tells me something. Turn the conversation into that. Don't turn the conversation into whether we need to be Christian nationals. We need to all that. That's not a gospel conversation.
Yeah.
Just say, okay, so
the answer to that one is no, though.
Right. There you go. Okay. So,
for sure. For sure. No Christian nationalism. No. Just that is hardcore.
Chad and I agree on that, because I lived in Europe where it was, and it didn't work.
No
so
way.
Europe did it better than we can imagine they could do it. But
I like where you're going, though.
The truth of all this, though, is these are questions about God. And I'll tell you what I'm learning here again in San Francisco is that people that learn to present the gospel in an argumentative way, one of the reasons they're doing that, because they don't believe it themselves. And the pushback helps them feel better about what they believe. Okay. If you really disagree with me, I mean, maybe I'm right. Rather than someone agreeing with you, say, yeah, I can agree with that, but I also agree with this. Oh no, maybe I'm not. Okay. So what's going on is not the surface. What's going on is a relationship with God. God has got them in a place where he wants to make it conviction deeper, more, better. It's not about getting somebody else saved. It's about our relationship with him. So what we're doing here, what I saw here was I realized that really quickly that like in a church situation, and I did this as a pastor in the church, is we had all kinds of mechanisms to train small group leaders or community group leaders or children's workers. I mean, literally, it was like we had coaching, we did this whole mechanism of this. And when I started asking the question here, when I moved back here in 2018, I started asking this one, what are you doing to help people prepare for evangelism? Oh, we did a seminar last year and we opened the back door and they all ran out to do it. I'm like, I've done everything possible that an adult can do in a church. The most difficult thing I've ever had to face is evangelism, especially in a place like San Francisco. And you're doing it as if it's a one and out. So this is not a one and out, man. I'm going to tell you, you're going to fail 9 times out of 10 in order to learn, because God doesn't want your success. He wants you to relate to him. He wants you to, it doesn't matter. Your success is minimal compared to his. I got to depend on God in a way I've never had to before. Guess what? That's beautiful. That's what God, it's why we don't have it all in our hands. And so anyway, that stuff comes out by conversation with one another, conversation both. So what Proxima is trying to do is we're setting up a space where we're trying to help clarify what it truly is. The proclamation of the gospel. It's not the plan of salvation alone. There's so much more beauty in it. And it's actually, we're winning, Chad, I live in San Francisco. I'm going to tell you, we're winning this. Okay. Let me explain why I can say that. Just think, everybody out there, use your imagination and think, what would happen if Jesus never walked the earth? If he never came? If he never declared that his kingdom is here? If it never happened? Would you have love to find? Would you have mercy to find? Would you have compassion to find? Would you have justice to find? Would you have the way that society works? None of that. This would be a land of chaos. Look outside and say, the kingdom of God is here. We're winning this. What you want is more of it. You want more of what Jesus, but Jesus is the one that, now we don't give him credit for that. We give us credit for that, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but we do. Our justice system is us as humans doing that. No, our justice system is a result of the kingdom of God is at hand. And so part of what we've got to do is broaden the gospel enough to say that the story of God we're impacted by the story of God far greater than just the salvation of a person. So what Proxima is trying to do, we're trying to set the framework for people to be able to do that and enter into those conversations, enter into places that people wouldn't ever want to talk about this stuff, to find ways to do that. And then the magical part, not the magical part, the part that was needed the most is just coaching. It says, because you're not going to learn this. You won't learn this by just reading you're just going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel guilty. And so, let me walk with you. Give me an opportunity to sit with you. And so a lot of my days are full of that. What's really weird about this, I'm telling you, this is the culture. And as soon as I say these things, people are like, I never thought of that. But it's our culture. We've made evangelism an individual sport. It was never intended to be an individual. Read Acts. It was never an individual thing. But yet we've made it that. And then we can't do it. And then we're frustrated because we can't do it. And as soon as I say that, and the people are like, what do you mean? Okay, here's the magic. The magic is us loving one another. I don't doubt that your church loves one another, Chad. My question is, do they do it in a space where the world can see them?
Right. That's been our MO, is come to us. Yep. Look at our thing. And then
nobody wants to do that. But
no,
the other big part is that I'll tell small groups, I said, do you guys share your non-Christian friends? No, it's an individual sport. I'm like, what are you talking about? Go to grab your best friend and go to lunch with another person in your small group. Well, that's going to feel awkward. And it's not awkward because you have a relationship with, it's that kind of stuff that's just, we're blinded by that. So people tell me, do
you think it's because people are thinking about it kind of in this, then I've got to get all the stuff. I got to dump the truck. I got to dump the Jesus truck.
Yep.
And then I do it and they're either going to say yes or no. And then I can, like you talk about, then I can walk away and go, well, at least I was faithful and I stood for Jesus. Rather than, I heard somebody recently say, was telling me a story about just in a relationship with someone else who they had been pursuing and just telling them God's heart for their life, and kind of old school, and hearing the person go, I don't want that. And so they asked another person, how long do I keep pursuing? And this other person said, I love it. The person goes, until you die.
Right.
I was like, there it is.
Right.
There it is.
So the premise of the question's wrong, Ted, because the how long do I do it means that we do something. Right.
Yeah.
Because if I stop, it won't happen. It's like, what are you talking about? What you believe is not right. And it's the answer to your question is that there's not an answer to your question. The answer to your question is you have a miswarped perception.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You shouldn't be asking that question. So it's obvious you have to be committed to this, to loving people.
But Chad, it's everywhere. I mean, I get asked questions like this like almost every day, and everything in me is like, well, the premise of your question's wrong. And so what I want to do to help you is not to answer your question. I want to help you understand that what you're thinking is not right, because the gospel isn't just the plan of salvation. I said this earlier. The gospel actually goes back. The Great Commission goes back to the Garden of Eden. Be fruitful and multiply. Why? So that the glory of God would be shown to creation. Okay, so then you go back to the covenant. I mean, the whole covenant is what Jesus is going to do. It's like the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel.
Yes.
Right. And the covenant was made in order to what? Bless what? Who are we blessing? Who is God going to bless by the covenant? Just, I'm going to bless you so that you can bless the world.
The nations.
Right. And none of it's about us. And I think that's just part of Americanism. We're individualists more than any other nation in the world. We think about us individually. It makes us strong as a country, but it makes us weak as Christians.
Yeah. One of the things I've thought about too is, because I would say if there's a major growth edge for me right now, it's in these kinds of conversations, but it's also in understanding the impact, like the ripple impact of the gospel. For sure, we want to have the Lord forgive us. For sure. We want that rightness there. And that is, but it's kind of like that's the ground zero. And then here's like, boom, like just this ripple effect of his love and his glory that's going to make things right. Things that we see, poverty, injustice, racism, hatred, he is going to fix it. And the gospel is the answer.
You're now talking about the gospel.
Yes.
It's not salvation. Yes. It's that, Chad. It's the kingdom of God. Right. And what happens is when we've narrowed it into something that it isn't, and we're looking for a result. And me, if I'm in this space with the Lord, I'll get back him saying, Mike, you're asking me for something that's restricting what I want to do. Will you quit asking me to do something for you that way? I'm like, but Lord, but it's me. I need you to do this. It's like as if you're the most important person on the planet. You really believe that, right, Mike? I'm like, well, yeah, I do, but no, I don't. But yeah, I do. No, but yeah, that's not the plan of God. That's the plan of Mike. And so part of us as a culture is trying to let go of the fact that everything's about us. And I go to church because I go to church. That's about me. I go this about me. I come to faith. It's about me. I'm in a Bible study because it's about me. I mean, all those things have to flip into that's not about you. It's about God's glory. Yeah. And if you're not able to connect that, then, and the world knows that, we try to represent God, and they're like, you're the most selfish people in America. What are you talking about?
Right. Yeah. Like it is. We have a really bad reputation in the culture.
And it's a culture. It's just the culture of it. It's not in the Bible. It's not in the Bible.
No.
Right.
No.
And so we just have to get back to the fact that, the story is God's story. It's not our story. Success is God's success. It's not our success. And like I said, the only thing he could fix every other thing. He can't fix the fact that we represented himself by love, us. we're the love.
Yeah.
Right? No, we need to defend the gospel and stop. He can take care of all that. That's his stuff. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, he does that in your life every day, right? He makes you question whether it's true.
Yeah. I think it was Yancey who maybe said something like, let's say, even if you still go with that old method and you can just like shred people in arguments, like you can present all the case for the existence of God. He said, nobody loses an argument and turns to Jesus. They'll be like, well,
there's always a winner and loser.
There's
always a winner and loser.
Yeah. Kind of back to what you said. And then one other thing I was just thinking about was, did you ever hear that story about when Christianity Today started and they asked Lewis to write? They asked him to write a series. This was post World War II, so World War II, he's doing Mere Christianity on the radio. It's all apologetics. It's all heavy stuff. So it's 1953. They asked him, we want you to write some apologetics articles for Christianity Today. And he said, I wish you well, but I am going to have to decline. He said, something like the flow of my creativity now does not work that way anymore. I'm done with direct frontal assaults. I prefer the back door of fiction and story. I was like, whoa, that's it. Now, I love that so much,
Yeah. Let me put him in another category, Chad. Yeah. This is Dallas Willard. Dallas Willard very said similar
Dallas
thing.
Willard.
And we're flocking to Dallas. I mean, literally, we're all flocking to Dallas Willard. Why?
Yes.
It's because he's dealing with our heart, not our head.
Yes.
I'm not listening to big exegetical things like I was when I was 20 years ago. Right. I need to somehow connect God to my heart, or it doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
And so again, I'm going to come back to what you said about the people that are really saying we have to stand for something. We have to do all that. Don't walk away from this saying that I'm very absolute about my faith. I'm very true about it. And what I'm going to tell you is that we don't have to change what we believe. We have to change our starting point with the world that we're in, because we can't start where we did in 1980, 1990. So the assumption is you can convince somebody of something, and that's not true anymore. And truth is not what it was. You know this. And literally, you're doing a podcast, so I could tell you this. You could bring an expert on a podcast, and he could have spent his whole life actually studying something. And the guy doing the podcast can make it, I don't agree with that. I think it's this. And he has just as much waste. The guy has spent his whole life studying. It's just, that's the world that we're living in.
That's the world we live in. Yeah.
So what people need, they don't need that. They don't need thought. They need to see it. They need to see it in action. They need to feel it. They need to touch it. It's the only part God can't do, is what we've got to do. Somehow we've got to get back to that in order. Otherwise, I'm not a fatalist, but we'll lose it, because if we compete at the world's level, we're going to lose. So
yeah, I hear so much hope.
Go ahead.
I was just going to comment on what you said. Like, you're not a fatalist. I hear so much hope in how you talk about the kingdom and how you talk about, because it isn't about me and it isn't about winning and losing. I can just go out there and enjoy what God's doing and see people for where they are. So say your thing.
Okay.
I live in San Francisco.
Okay. So I could walk out the door and tell you 99% of the people out there, if I said I was an evangelical Christian, would hang me up. But I love it. Especially that, because that's usually catered by people misunderstanding. And if anybody ever tells me that, I make it a point to get to know them. And I'm going to finally get to a point where I'm going to say, have you ever met an evangelical? And they'll say, no, I just know. They're just these. I am one. No, you can't be one. You're not like them. That's literally what you get. I'm like, okay, that's the problem. Now, what I was going to tell you was going back to this. Oh gosh, I probably lost it now. So why don't you ask your question and I'll get it back.
Mine's going to be like, it's actually, you're the first, because I'm starting to do more and more just people that I'm interested in talking to that are shaping me. And so I'm always going to finish with one question, and it's a fun one. And it's one that I think you'll have an easy answer to. Favorite movie and why?
Oh gosh.
Or it could be a recent favorite.
As soon as you said, I'm going to trust the Spirit of God in this. And because as soon as you said that, my discernment was Saving Private Ryan.
Okay.
And because I'm talking to you, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
More sense to you than it would to your listeners as well.
Yeah.
Because it's a story of sacrifice.
Yes.
Right. And when you get, I mean, actually, this is what's wacky about the culture we live in, is that the gospel, the message of love, the true message of love, it's a storyline that makes billions of dollars because it's so rich, but it's so unseen. It's so uncommon. And so the thing that you can't lose hope in the fact that if you do that part, God's big enough to do all the other stuff. Okay. So that I would tell you that. And they're yearning for this. I'm telling you, Chad. I live in San Francisco, so you know that I'm talking to people that are not the people that you would run into. But if you intersect, if your starting point's different, you just have some great conversations, about this stuff. So we need to get to that point.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I actually, because even when I went, like it was so great to be with you and watch you love the people that you already knew. Like these were your friends, and you were introducing me to your friends, and it was such a vivid picture of, hey, Lord, I need to think about things in a little different way. It's been a zero-sum game a little bit for me. And so, yeah, man, I appreciate you so much and love you. And
thank you, Chad.
Yeah, very thankful. And I'll just say this too for listeners. Lisa and I, my wife and I, we support Proxima, and I just love what Mike's doing, and Katie, and encourage you, pray. I know there's some needs they have, and if there's the Lord's tugging on your heart, and if you're challenged too, I think it should be challenging. Hopefully you're challenged, as we've listened. Any parting thoughts?
I'll give you two things. One, the website is LIVE, Proxima, which is the idea of living in proximity with people that are different. Liveproxima.org. That's the website. What you can watch for is that right now we're in development of something we're calling the Proxima Cafe, which is to create this kind of a dialogue, and you guys aren't in San Francisco, you're welcome into it. But what you're going to hear us do is you're going to hear us talk about this place and what this place is. And this place isn't America. This is the problem with San Francisco. It's the canary in the coal mine. It's the foretelling of what America. Historically, it's always been that. And so you can't ignore it, but you can't make it all of America either, because there's lots of things in America that aren't not San Francisco.
Right.
But this is you're going to get influenced by it. I can promise you that. So I used to be able to do this when I went and visited churches. I'd say, every day of your life, you're touched by something in San Francisco. Like, what are you talking about? I said, well, you're holding a phone, you're doing it literally.
That's right.
So every day. The ideology of the social internet came from here. It's all that stuff. Music that you listen to is shaped by this and all that stuff. So anyway, that's the pitch for Sam. So liveproxima.org and watch for the Proxima Cafe to be coming soon.
Yeah, and I'll also put those things in the show notes, just so you guys can check it out. But hey, everybody, thank you for joining us today for Unfinished People. I've been with my really good friend Mike Edwards. We'll see you next time. Thanks.